Welcome to Daredevil in the Details, a show that explores and dotes on the philosophy and the themes of Netflix's Daredevil, a digression collection brought to you by Method to the Madness and ZeroIndent. I'm author DC McNeil, and as always, I'm joined by Patrick from Method to the Madness, this time in person.
Hi, David.
This was sort of an unplanned but welcome change.
Yeah. So, I had a bit of a morning.
Yeah, okay, explain yourself.
I woke up, made myself a coffee, immediately spilt it everywhere. Spent ages cleaning it up, like on my carpet. And then I was getting ready for this podcast. Realized my headphones weren't charged, and also I didn't have, for reasons, my usual mic is gone. I only had a mic with no stand, so I had to shamefully call up David and be like,
True.
"My life is falling apart. We need to record at your place."
Save me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes,
You're
yes.
my only hope. Yeah, so we're in the same room, which I don't know if it's going to change the energy. I think it might be a little saucier than usual.
Yeah,
because we're quite, there's quite a nice somber vibe. But I'm wondering if that's going to change in the same room. You know?
Yeah. No, it's a bit claustrophobic in here, so we might go a little crazy.
Yeah, listen, we could pop off. I mean, it feels very fitting for this to be the 2 episodes that we're talking about. I know initially we discussed doing the whole of like the initial Punisher arc as the opening for this season. The reason why I changed my mind is I finished the 2nd episode. So I finished what's it called? Dogs. I can't see it from here. Scroll down.
It is called Dogs to a Gunfight.
Dogs to a Gunfight. So like initially we were going to do all, I think it's like 4, which kind of formed that initial arc. It's the next one, or maybe it's the 3. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's 4.
Yeah. But the reason why I kind of changed my mind on that is going through and particularly finishing that 2nd episode. I had so much to talk about from that episode specifically that I was like, we will be here for 7 hours if we do all 4 episodes. So I'm kind of keen to get stuck into it. So, I mean, this episode we're talking about Season 2, Episode 1 and 2, which is episodes 14 and 15. So we took a little break. You weren't listening to this. You might, there'll be a month, but for us, it's been a few months.
Yes.
A couple of months here.
Yeah, it has been a long time.
Yeah, which I thought was a good idea because the distance between these 2 seasons when they came out was quite long as well. How did coming back to it treat you?
Yeah, honestly, it was good that we had a break. Look, I love this show, but like watching it all and then like rewatching the episodes, I started to become a little numb to it, looking at it very analytically, which is like, it's kind of the opposite of watching it for pleasure. But this time, watching these first 2 episodes, I got the best of like both worlds.
Okay.
Like I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I was looking at it, writing notes and stuff. It was good.
Yeah. I think I definitely had the same. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to enjoy it as much going through this lens. I think what I'm learning about this show in particular is it is completely immune to the usual problem I have with media, where like I dissect everything I see, like it's just inevitable. Whereas I feel like this, particularly the 2nd episode, I think the 1st episode is not as strong. The 2nd episode in particular, I was just geeking out the whole time. I was like, this show's so good the whole time. I was just geeking.
What was it? The stuff about like math that got you really excited?
Yeah. I forgot the kind of levers they're looking to pull here.
Yeah,
and how
it's very like personal, right? Like it delves really deep into like character and stuff.
Like, and it starts there.
Yeah,
and I don't know that a lot of shows would open a season thinking about this stuff in the same way. It's really good. Let's get straight into it. So we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 1 first. This was written by Doug Petrie and Marco Ramirez and directed by Phil Abraham. Both of the first 2 episodes are both written by Doug Petrie and Marco Ramirez and directed by Phil Abraham.
So not our boys.
Which I don't want to talk about too much of the Paratech stuff, but they are busy working on the Defenders.
Oh, okay.
Before they get busy being fired from the Defenders.
Oh no.
Well, they walked. The long story short is they basically said, hey, we wanted to make some really good episodes of this show. We have absolutely no interest in doing the Defenders. And then they sort of were like, oh, maybe give it a go. And then they just were like, nah, fuck no.
Okay.
Can't do it. So that was kind of how they ended up leaving, which is interesting.
I see.
Hmm.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Okay. Episode 14, Bang. Hell's Kitchen swelters. Summer bleaches the sidewalks in bitumen, while Nelson and Murdoch try to keep the lights on and the fans running. Elsewhere, the Irish mob are gunned down by an army. The survivor, Elliot Grotto, seeks out Nelson and Murdoch and Paige at Josie's, interrupting a quaintly intimate game of pool between Matt and Karen. Grotto explains he's part of the Irish mob and relays the gruesome execution of every single member of the mob by a paramilitary outfit. Foggy and Murdoch meet Mahoney at the scene of the executions and explain the same fate befell the Dogs of Hell. Foggy sets off to call on an old contact at the Dogs of Hell, while Matt dons the suit to rattle some cages as Daredevil. Matt learns that all of the attacks were conducted by a single person. Meanwhile, Karen and Grotto are ambushed at the hospital by the culprit. They make a hasty escape while Daredevil tussles with the assailant. Karen and Grotto escape thanks to Daredevil's intervention, but in a final scuffle, the killer gets the upper hand and shoots Daredevil, sending him over the edge of the balcony. Bang indeed.
It's an absolutely cracking first episode, let me just say that.
It is great.
There is so... I've been trying to articulate the specific thing the show does differently to other shows, and it is increasingly impossible to nail down. But I think one of the really, really big, interesting... It's not even a swing, it's just a decision it makes early on, is it says that there's all these texture details it adds that really aren't relevant to the story. Like, for example, and I'm interested to get your take on this, like, what do you make of the fact that it's summer? That's, for some reason, something that they dote on immediately.
Yeah, like, they said, it's this and this degrees outside, why is this guy wearing a vest and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I didn't pick up on that. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not really sure. I just thought it was notable. Like, they have a few characters noted pretty explicitly, which is I think a part of it is the way in which the story feels so well realized is that these aren't necessarily direct details that matter to the story. It doesn't explicitly matter that it's summer, but what it does do is it creates the opportunity for texture with Nelson and Murdoch, because it's not only that their air conditioner is broken, it's that they don't have one. And it's used as a mechanism to point out the fact that, like, yeah, it's not just that they're broke, it's that they're hella broke, right? There are ways in which it is they are distinguishing these characters from other characters we'll meet later this season who have access to means, who have the ability to live comfortably. And I think there's an exchange happening where they're trying to point out the fact that Nelson and Murdoch are exchanging their own comfort for the type of work they're doing.
Right.
And I'm not really sure like how summer will end up fitting into that, except for the fact that it rains a lot in summer, and this show is always interested in when it rains.
True.
I also think that the New York that we see here is in that opening sequence with Daredevil, where he's kind of going around and moving through the shadows and things like that. They do a really deliberate thing where they don't show him, and so it makes him feel like he's part of Hell's Kitchen and he's part of the city. Yeah, which I was just really stunned by how cool that sequence is.
Yeah. More Batman parallels, but hey, like it's a different flavor when it's Daredevil. I like it.
These two episodes are really thinking about Batman a lot.
Yeah.
Especially the next one. I was like, oh man, y'all just fully took that from them, huh? Yeah, it's really good. I guess the other piece that I thought was interesting is Matt stops the bank robber in the church.
Yes.
And then he does this little smile.
Yeah, I love that. It pans up, and he's on the roof, he's overlooking the city, and it pans up past like a church cross in neon lights, which is cool. Like, this show has the coolest symbolism, or like coolest imagery, like religion mixed with grunge kind of thing, which is like very,
religious grunge.
Yeah, religious grunge. Like, that's kind of what this show is. It's cool.
Yeah. I think the other thing you just hit on there, which hasn't really clicked into place until you've said that, is it's not only that it's grunge, it's that it's a specific flavor of like, it's like 90s grunge, but it manages not to be cringe about it. I think so many shows would tip that scale too far. Yeah,
what I like about this as well, and this opening, it gets like, this is about maybe as comic booky as it kind of gets. Batman. Fucking said
Batman.
Daredevil taking down bad guys. You know, it's like stopping like bank robbers, like literal bank robbers. The cops are chasing them, and his life is together. He's manages to be the good guy lawyer in the day. You know, helping people despite his lack of air conditioning, and he's stopping bank robbers by night in Daredevil, and everything's running smoothly. And like this is
the only time in his life where that's true.
Yeah, but like it is important that there is a time in his life where it worked. Like it worked, yeah. And,
it's like the lie of the past starts somewhere, and it starts here.
Yeah,
which is the place where it did well. It's working sort of, and we'll talk about the Karen stuff in a second, because that does kind of come up almost immediately after our opening sequence. But the other thing that happens here is I think it's just funny that Foggy they have this conversation, and Foggy's like, "You never come out with me anymore, Murdoch. Yeah, you should come dancing with me, Nelson and Murdoch." And it's a really good exchange. You can feel what I quite like about the acting, the performance here is it doesn't feel the same as the start of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
There is a tension between these two, and Foggy even he's jokingly saying, "You never come out anymore." What he means is you're always out in the suit.
Yeah.
There's a tension here that didn't exist in the previous season, and I had forgotten how subtle they handle that. It's pretty, honestly, it's just impressive. Storytelling, the way that they managed to fold it in. And then kind of secondary to that, you have Foggy, who in the first season was the one who was saying we should get big cases, we should be making money, why are we chasing ambulances and doing good for no cash whatsoever. He was the one that kind of was pushing back against that. And yet here he's the one who tries to keep everyone upbeat about the fact that they're getting paid and food and they can't afford to keep the fans on and stuff.
But it's what he secretly wants.
That's true.
Yeah. That's why it's so important to him that first of all, Matt stays alive. That's why he's like he looks out for Matt constantly, and Karen.
Do you think the other thing I've noted down here, I guess, like on that exchange where they come in, and she's like, "Where have you two bloody boys been?" Which is very funny. The other thing I think is interesting is the choice to have Foggy. It's the choice to have them being paid in food and things like that, knowing that Foggy's potential future as a butcher that he turned down.
Right.
There's something, I don't know what it is. There's something there.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. I don't know. It's like that association of like food with goodness or nobility.
Yeah. I see that. Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, like the surface level function of that is to say that like they're helping people who actually can't afford legal help but need it.
Yeah.
And then these people are like just doing the best they can, paying these lawyers in food, and it's like just a bunch of good people being good toward each other.
Which we love to see it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's wholesome.
Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about the Karen and Matt stuff in a second, because it starts almost immediately here in this scene. Is there anything that you have on the intro before we just start trying to unpack what the fuck? It's so immediate. Do you have anything else before, like if just before when they come into the office, like from that initial walkabout?
Well, I guess, I mean, superhero show, like they do this in the first season as well, but guns are established very quickly in the show, in this season, which is obviously a very, very big part of this season specifically, like the idea of guns is like pretty broad, but I feel like there is a lot of focus on it in this initial scene, which I thought was curious.
Yeah, I mean, and then you get our boy Turk selling guns as well, which we'll talk about when we get that. But yeah, I mean, it's thinking about tools, and it's thinking about the implication of not just using tools, but having access to specific sets of tools. Matt has access to the suit, which makes him immediately a more resilient piece of the puzzle that's on the board. The Punisher has access to different tools as well, and it seems like Karen makes a comment later, which I think we'll wrap this back around to. But I think it's thinking about like what does being in proximity to those specific tools do to you, and do to the way that you think about how you can solve problems.
Yeah.
If if you have an AK, an automatic assault rifle, every nail starts to look like it could be hammered in with a bullet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately the question that Frank Castle brings to the equation is, if you had somebody willing to, if you had somebody whose every day was that one bad day for Matt that could push him over the line, what does it actually mean for Matt? What does he make of that? And he initially rejects it pretty much, bold face. But we'll get to kind of why that's interesting with the whole Karen thing. But yeah, it is immediately thinking about, what does crime look like in Hell's Kitchen?
Yeah.
Because it's about to immediately change that.
Yeah, I feel what you're talking about how Matt's interiority, him having access to the suit and the tools enabling him to act as Daredevil, that sort of parallels the larger societal conflicts going on about that this season explores, about how the existence of Daredevil invites a lot of these other people like Punisher,
mm-hmm.
which is, ultimately not a great thing.
Yes.
So.
And there's that question of whether or not, I mean, we'll get to it because Karen has a speech that's pretty explicit about this. I don't know if it's in the first or the second episode. I think the second. The other question it's asking is is evil self-perpetuating, or is it good men doing the wrong things that enables evil?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked in the first season about the ways in which Fisk represents the evil that does not undo itself. That is in some way unbeatable by it doesn't imagine evil in the same way that the 80s and 90s did, particularly the 70s, 80s. The kind of Stephen King imaginary of evil, which is this thing which is necessarily unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
And evil ultimately, in its greed and its lust for power and its pure existence at all, will defeat itself, because evil cannot sustain itself. It is inherently a flawed project. And I think Daredevil's asking a much more kind of perhaps nihilistic question here, almost immediately, which is you're right. What does it mean for the ways in which crime is changing in this city? And then also, what does it mean in the ways in which our characters imagine morality in the context of a Daredevil who invites the existence of Frank Punisher?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of I'm not sure what the right phrasing is at this stage, but it's asking us, the audience, whether or not we think that it's Daredevil's fault, mm-hmm. whether or not we think that the fact that the Avengers exist in this universe tangentially, of course, whether or not they invited Daredevil's existence at all, the idea of vigilantism. And then, of course, this season is going to explore that with the introduction of Elektra and, of course, the focus on the Punisher.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's all here, and then it's going to proceed to unpack it.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very efficient. I'm just going to mute this so we don't get any Discord notifications on the recording. Okay, I want to talk about this because it's pretty quick. They have this exchange so that they come into the office, and there is immediately vibes between Matt and Karen.
Oh, yeah.
It's immediate. And I was like, oh, I thought this happened later, but it's instant.
Dude, she's so horny for Matt.
It's crazy.
All the time, yeah.
It's crazy. It's wild. We'll talk about some implications for that when we get to those scenes later. I guess it's probably a natural segue to talk about the Irish kind of mob hit.
Yeah.
Because we were already talking about the nature of evil and things like that. We get the Irish mob leader sort of doing a speech, sort of saying, we let ourselves get ousted by Fisk. It's our time again. Mm-hmm. It's our time to step in. And one of the consequences of that is you can tell, I think in a different TV show, this is the villain of the season.
Yes, exactly. This is a bait and switch.
It's so good.
It's great. Yeah,
because they set it up and he's got, it's so good. So he does this big speech about there's a power vacuum and we need to take our own back, and
mm-hmm.
We've been laying low for too long, and this city is ripe with the opportunity for us to make our mark. And as he goes to finish his speech, he's got the bottle of Jameson, and he lifts it up, and he's about to provide the crescendo to the praise and speech of the villain scene, and he gets shot in the goddamn head.
It's so cool.
It's crazy.
Because Yeah, you're right. In another show, like these would be the villains. That's what you kind of. I feel like most people would have that in their mind when they're watching the speech when they're watching this man, because they make such an effort to showcase a lot of the characters and stuff in that room. They have a lot of characterization.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like building relationships and stuff like that. It's crazy, like how deep they go into this Irish gang who's about to be murdered.
And then the Punisher slaughters them all.
Yeah,
it's wild.
And at least for me, I mean, back in the day when I first watched this, I was like, oh man, this is kind of lame. Like, Wilson Fisk, the mobster, gets taken down, and then just like the new villain is a new mob. That's kind of lame. And then yeah, it gets revealed that no, that's actually not what's happening, and it's cool. It's really cool. Like the direction, the show picks the really interesting directions to go in, and I love that it kind of plays on the the expectations of how you think superhero narratives go and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think there's an embellishment here of not just about expectations, but also about like structure. It's a very structurally notable thing that this happens first. This is the inciting incident for the story.
Yeah.
And the inciting incident for the story is the Punisher removing what we would suppose to be the villains of the season from the board. Which I think is a very different maneuver than the first season. The first season immediately sets up Fisk as the thing to overcome from day jump. Whereas this, I think, is... and this is some of the criticism that I've seen and that I recall of this season, is that it can feel... there are elements of it that can feel disjointed structurally.
Yes.
But if I had to sort of try and think through the way that we're meant to take this... I think these first 4 episodes are kind of like the introduction. Like, it's like reintroducing the stakes, and then after that, the story starts. But I guess, like, yeah, it is a subversion, and it works. It's like everything Daredevil does that's a subversion. It's a subversion, but it has a point. They're not just trying to be clever.
Yeah, there's a lot of significant things that come out of this scene, like Grotto, for example. Like his whole last character that continues on for the next few episodes, and he's very integral to not only like the actual plot, but like he provides in the coming episodes. He provides a lot of like dramatic. He provides a lot of drama and a lot of like moral dilemma and stuff like that, it's definitely, it weaves itself into the plot like really well. I feel.
Yeah, and that's like a really hard thing to do. Is that, like, just candidly from a storytelling perspective, there's an element of precision here. I mean, we've talked about that a lot. Daredevil's a very like exacting show.
Yeah.
But I feel like this moment in particular, you go, oh shit. And then as events spiral off the back of this, you're still going, oh shit, until the end of the second episode. Like, it just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really well done. I mean, for those who haven't watched the episode, I guess, basically, like, this all happens, he gets shot in the head, and then just bullets rip through the restaurant.
Yeah. And
just slaughter them all. The only one that gets away is Grotto. Which will bring us to kind of what we're about to talk about in the next scene. There's some stuff, I mean, there's some stuff in this scene that I think is goofy. I have a vague criticism of Foggy this season already.
Okay.
They've goofed him up a little bit too much for my opinion. He's a little too goofy. It could, like, because he has to balance the line of being like the moral absolute, in opposition to Matt's bullshit.
Yeah, because Matt gets pretty dark this season. Yeah.
And he's just a little, and he's standing up to really important people. Foggy's doing all these really cool maneuvers to outmaneuver these other, lawyers and things like that. But he just comes off as like a little doofy a little too often.
Yeah.
And the line he has here, he says, he's saying it to Matt about Karen. They're at the bar, they're playing pool. And he said, she's as quick as she is beautiful, like me. And I went, it's a good line. It's just a little goofy. You know what I'm saying?
He might be feeling himself because he had that night with the barista.
That's true.
So he's peak confidence right now.
This is peak confidence foggy in these 2 episodes. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
you're not wrong. I guess let's set up this pool scene because I think it is really interesting to me. Like, okay, so we had the vibes in the office before with Matt and Karen.
Yes.
And now, we have this very layered exchange where, so obviously Foggy and Karen are playing pool because Matt can't see.
Yeah.
And so Matt goes.
Well, Matt, they're playing pool with Matt. It's just Yeah,
he's there also. And it's his shot, and so Karen helps him line him up, and he stuffs it up. And then there's like this effortless maneuver in this scene where Karen wants to get closer to Matt, and so she helps guide him with the pool cue.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt has to like effortlessly only be guided just enough to do what she's trying to help him do, because if he does it any better, then it will be obvious that he could just school everyone in this game, which he does. Karen goes to the bar and he immediately sinks 2 shots, but it's and then obviously he wants her to get closer to him as well, so he's playing along.
Mm.
It's really it's so effortlessly executed.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, no, effortless is like the word that best describes Matt. He's such a player.
He's so smooth.
He's so smooth.
Which, I mean, that's very much from the comics. He's a bit of a root rat in the comics. I think the other thing too. Okay, so yeah, they then cut back to the scene of the crime, like the scene of the slaughter. And there's something interesting and telling to me here, which is like one of the police officers. Oh no, hang on. The way that it goes is Grotto comes in, they have their exchange, and he says, "Hey, you need to get me into WITSEC."
Yeah.
And then the boys decide to go to the murder scene, like go to the scene of the crime to see what they can learn about this guy. And I mean, we'll talk about Grotto a little bit. He basically just comes to them. He says, "Hey, you need to get me into WITSEC," and they're like, "Why would we help a mobster?" He's like, "Look, you guys are the good guys. This is what you do. You help people. I need help." Right? And then obviously they kind of agree tentatively to help him, but they go, we'll go work it out. So then we're at the crime scene, and Matt's overhearing. He does his usual thing where he's overhearing stuff that he's not supposed to.
Yes.
I think it's really telling that one of the cops' first reaction, I think he's the detective, his first reaction is how much paperwork this dead Irish incident will attract.
Yeah.
And the show seems to understand something about the material nature of the police as a function. Like, if you think about the way that these police officers think about their job, the show seems to realize like a big part of policing in general is the bureaucratic engine that drives it and informs it.
Mm-hmm.
And the natural tension that exists between the people within that system who are obligated to follow it, and the frustration they feel and how much it holds them back.
Mm-hmm.
Which is obviously the big tension of this show is like Daredevil is someone that exists beyond the law. But I think that, in comparison to someone like Foggy or even Mahoney, because they're very, very similar, there is something like very quixotic about their approach to law and crime and order. Like there's something like sort of very idealistic and impractical.
Yes.
But then on the other side of it, you have like the overly nihilistic police approach to it, like the other police, where they can't even imagine that this is that they can do any good here. And then you sort of have somewhere else on a different spectrum entirely, that and the Punisher and the spaces they occupy, where I think for the Punisher, that character would think of Daredevil's approach as quixotic as Foggy and Mahoney in comparison to Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Like Matt is one step behind. He is if Foggy and Mahoney are ignorant, Matt is less ignorant. And Frank Castle is even less ignorant on that kind of spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like it's the thing this season is going to be thinking about a lot, obviously with the inclusion of this character and obviously the Elektra stuff that we've already alluded to. But yeah, I really like the way it filters that murder immediately through the lens of what is this machine of bureaucracy of law enforcement? How is it going to treat it and approach it?
Yeah.
Because obviously we then get later the DA basically just immediately leveraging this this WITSEC proposal, like literally just like immediately makes this guy bait without even thinking about it. And there's a way in which like the engine has different priorities than the people that it polices, governs, and the people that do the policing and governing from within.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, from the perspective of someone like the Punisher, the difference between the law and like vigilantism, or what the Punisher does, isn't a matter of morality. It's a matter of like how different institutions handle the bad people.
Yeah.
Essentially, like, there's it's interesting.
Yeah, it's not thinking about, like, it doesn't imagine that bad actors within those systems are what are causing these levers to get pulled. It imagines the system is like making people into bad actors on its behalf, which I think is a very different approach than the first season, where the first season, because everything was so corrupted by Fisk, it was all in service of this, or rather, like, every system was bent to his will. Now we get to see the system working properly, and working properly, it's still broken.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about this show. Like, it always finds the flaws in like everything, and like just it really takes its time to explore them. Like in this like whole 13 episode run, like it explores that aspect of the law, like the bureaucratic, like red tape kind of side of the law, like to a really interesting extent, and that that kind of embodies the whole Punisher arc, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously like no accident, right? It's and that's kind of the cool thing is like it's a show that, like, we've said this before, it's a show that has themes and then has characters talk about them, which is like, it sounds so basic, but if you're out there and you're working on a story and the story has themes in it, find ways for the characters to have opinions about them and talk about them.
Yeah,
because that's where you get these really good, interesting conversations.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, and what's so good is that Foggy is like, well, hypothetically, if we hypothetically had a hypothetical witness, what would you hypothetically suggest we do? And Mahoney has to kind of, once again, do the right thing, like do the morally right thing, even though it's he's doing the wrong thing for his job. Like, he's going against the system to do the morally right thing.
Yeah. And then that's why this show also, like a section of this show is dedicated to procedural law drama, and like because it's interesting, and two, it feeds into those themes, like, and it allows, and as you said, like it's a device for characters to talk about those themes, and it's relevant to the plot, it's relevant to everything,
which is kind of like, I mean, this is the real one-up maneuver that the comics did on the Batman stories, is that inherent paradox of Bruce Wayne, where like he's a rich guy that could fix the city through like social change because of how much money he has, and then he's out there beating dudes up. This is so much more finely tuned into, well, Matt doesn't. He can't go out and get it done through the law. He's not rich. This is a valid option for him to execute, right? You know, in fact, it is one of the only levers he can pull, because so often they are penned in by the law, or the law can't get it done, or in this context, which I think is absolutely true, the cops can't get it done. You know, Matt and Foggy have their little kind of, they have a little spat as Matt leaves, because he's like, I'm gonna go rattle some cages, and Foggy's like, dude, come on, like, don't go out there. And Matt's like, Matt's like, are you fucking dumb? Are you looking at this shit? Like, you're at the crime scene. You think the police can deal with this? Absolutely not. And I have to agree. They can't get it done. But then I guess the question becomes, which is what Karen raises later. Question becomes, just because they can't get it done this way, is Matt's way what creates this problem?
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, the other thing I like here is there's multiple speeches in praise of the villain, right? Setting up the Punisher. You have Mahoney say, like, you know, it must have been a squad of trained killers. Which is cool. Like, I like this indirect characterization, telling us how afraid we should be of Frank Castle. And we are, because he's fucking terrifying.
Yes.
In these opening episodes. And then, of course, we get Rattle Some Cages, which is literally a quote from Nolan's Batman films.
Is it?
Yeah. I'm gonna go rattle some cages.
Okay.
Yeah. It's I think it's The Dark Knight, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Nice.
there you go. You know, just really, really lifting it directly, huh? You know, it's good. Yeah. Do you have anything else on the crime scene?
Not on the crime scene. Nope.
Okay. Basically, we'll kind of move forward a little bit. I've written down here, oh my god, our boy Turk is back, let's go.
Yeah, I love this scene. God, I love Turk. He's so funny.
He's such a good character. Their little dynamic that they have is one of my favorite things in this show.
It's so great.
He tries to like appeal to Matt's better nature.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, come on, we're cool, man.
He's like, come on, D.
Yeah, it's so funny. You know, and what makes him so charming is he really is the least of the bad guy. Like, he's the least bad of the bad guys.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't know when to shut up.
Yeah.
Like, if he said 2 less things, he probably doesn't get beaten up in this exchange.
Yeah, yeah. And he's such a... I can't remember how you described him last season, but he's such a slimy salesman too. Like,
yeah, he's a real snake oil salesman. Yeah.
He's trying to you know sell these guns to these guys, and then he turns around when Daredevil's beating them up, and he says, "No, that tin in my trunk can kill a rabbit, man."
It's so good. God, I mean, the other thing that we get here is an understanding that crime has reverted to some kind of like normal pattern in Fisk's absence.
Mm-hmm.
With the notable absence of suddenly all of the gangs are being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool to just see, like, yeah, even in Fisk's absence, crime still does happen.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said in that opening scene, there's still a place for Matt in the suit so far, which is good. You know, it gives us a, what would you call it? It gives us a good framework for what's about to change. Obviously, these 2 episodes are really establishing business as usual. Like, what does the world look like before it all goes upside down?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a really important part of that. It's like, yeah, Tuck is still out there. People are still buying guns. Like, getting rid of Fisk didn't magically get rid of all the crime, which is just like important as like setup.
Yeah, it kind of makes you think, like, is Matt complicit in a cycle of crime? Because while easy petty crime goes on, like Turk selling guns, and not people like Fisk running the show, that's where Matt is in his element, and that's what he enjoys. It's where he's his true self, you know.
Oh, man.
So
Pat asking the real questions.
yeah,
shit. Is that boy needing the heat to be turned up to 11 to feel anything?
yeah, exactly. Like, as the Punisher says, like in a few episodes, like, you know, Matt beats the criminals, they go to jail and they get out in a few weeks. And that's what Turk says, you know, I'll be out in a week anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Matt's fine with that.
Yeah,
it means he can beat up Turk some more.
Yeah, he's like, let's go.
Yeah.
I got the devil in me, son.
Yeah.
Damn, what a good character. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that happens is Foggy's on a side mission.
This is great. I love this scene.
Foggy says to Matt, when they're splitting up and Matt's gonna go put on the suit, he says to him, you know, I'll go see I'll go rattle some cages. And Foggy goes, yeah, well, I got some contacts of my own in the Hells Angels. You know, we're gonna go chase that down. And Matt's like, what are you, okay, fine. And what we get is one of the genuinely funniest, weirdest little Foggy side quests, where he walks into a biker bar
mm-hmm.
and just completely shoots a shot, no questions asked. He's like, he doesn't do it very well. He's like, I know this guy, I went to primary school with him, and they're like, fucking you, bro. What are you talking about? It's so good. And then they're like, you know, what do you know, Harvard? And he's like, actually, I didn't go to Harvard.
Yeah, Stanford, actually.
Yeah. So good. He's a tough son of a bitch.
He is.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, he goes for it.
He does. And it pays off, too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, he's able to kind of correctly say, like, you know, this save the world bullshit that Nelson and Murdoch is focused on has a material benefit here.
Mm-hmm.
It gives him social cachet that he can spend with these bikies, and he can say, I helped your buddies, I helped this person, I helped that person. It gives him currency in this conversation that he wouldn't have otherwise.
Yes.
Which is, I don't know what to think of that. I don't know if we're supposed to be like, this is a good thing, this is a bad thing. Is he using the fact that they helped this? Like, it's so agnostic to this approach.
He's a lawyer.
Yeah, he's a
That's
lawyer.
what he does.
That's what he does, baby. Leverages, he bargains, he's a lawyer. You know?
Yeah, I mean, Foggy also has a salesman energy about him. 100%. So yeah, you know, it makes a lot of sense.
You know what he does?
Yeah.
he has like a selling you newspapers on the side of the road kind of vibe to him. Yeah. What a little goofball. You know? Also, cut your hair, Foggy.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
You hippie.
You no good hippie. It's great. And he also, yeah, I mean, he learns the information he needs, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And goes on his way. And, you know, we kind of get our two guys. Well, we get Foggy narrowly escaping his demise.
Yeah.
We get Matt really having the opposite kind of day here. So Matt, trying to think of how this sequence plays out. So the Karen and Grotto are at the hospital, right?
Yes. And
the Punisher role, it's crazy. So, you know, this thing, like, I mean, the lesson that we learn is from the bikie is that it's him, it's one man.
Yes.
Which is such a what an incredible little just way to set that up.
Yeah, and
to have all these guys be like master train squad, killers, paramilitary, and then just no, it's one guy.
And then from that, it cuts to doesn't it? He says that, and then it cuts to Frank's like legs as he's walking through the hospital, right?
I think it cuts to it does, yeah, and then it pans up to the back of his head.
Yeah. Like, you know, such a great, you know, like classic, you know, editing, juxtaposing images to create meaning kind of stuff going on here, like very elementary, you know, filmmaking.
This second episode's full of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's really epic too, and there's like some sort of music going on.
You know what it is though? It's epic, but it's not like they don't play it too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? Like it's not like you know he doesn't come in and like the Inception horns don't blare.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like dramatic. It's like supposed to be simmering and threatening.
Yeah.
Rather than this, it's not like a big villain reveal. It's a slow simmer to a boil.
Well, it's really like kind of subtly done where that first shot of there's a gun hanging in his coat and it's like kind of swinging into frame and you see it like it's
little touches.
It's really good.
Do you think I mean okay, so yeah, the other thing that happens here, so I've literally written the end of this episode is the hardest thing the show has done. No him, it's one man, cut to the Punisher strolling in.
Yeah.
And then Frank does, speaking of Batman, Frank does the exact move that Bruce Wayne does in The Dark Knight.
I know exactly what scene you're talking about when he's going to the panic room.
Yeah, and he just, He, without breaking stride, he just fully disarms a guy and knocks him out.
Yeah.
And I was watching this and I'm like, these guys, before they sat down in the writer's room, they fully just watched The Dark Knight. There is so much of that film in these two episodes.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's such a good sequence. He basically just walks through the duty cop, disarms him, knocks him out. And then Karen and Grotto kind of beat a hasty retreat. And while they're doing that, Matt zeroes in on their location as Daredevil. And him and the Punisher have like a big time fight on the rooftop, which is what allows Karen and Grotto to escape ultimately. And there's some, there's such good characterization in this choreography. So Karen and Grotto are fleeing, and you get Karen just like freaking the fuck out, but just staying on task. Like she knows the assignment here. She has to get Grotto out.
Yes.
They get in the car, and he's like, "Whose car is it?" She's like, "It's a buddy of mine." He's like, "When was the last time it drove?" And like, they just have it, and she's fully in panic mode. She's like, "Why are we fucking talking about this?"
Whose car is it? Is it Ben's?
I think it's Ben's.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's the implication anyway.
Right. Why was it? Did she drive it there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. How long has it been here? What the hell? Like, what do you mean? Like,
I don't. Yeah, it's a question. It's a great question for another time. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like, and then Matt stops the Punisher from taking the final shot, and they have this, and the Punisher immediately drops Matt. Like, the first thing he does is just ring his fucking bell instantly, and I was like, oh fuck, like, we're in it. This guy doesn't give a shit.
I love fight scenes where at least one of the combatants is just like a brick shit house, you know, and like like their movements are just constricted to like moving like this.
Yeah.
But it just has so much force behind it. And you're like, oh shit, damn.
Yeah. Frank's for real like a heaviveight.
Yeah.
And Matt's a welterweight.
Yeah.
And he just knocks the shit out of him.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, god damn.
And then of course I mean, what an insane way to end a first episode of your TV show. Matt gets shot in the head.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, fuck. He gets fully shot in the head. And what I love the show's sense of style, is Frank... So they have a scuffle. Frank gets his pistol and he levels it at Matt, as Daredevil. And you can see Matt thinking about doing something in this split second. And Frank says bang and pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
And... Matt falls out of frame, and then we cut to credits. And the fact that Bernthal's delivery of that word "bang" doesn't feel cheesy is insane to me. What a level of restraint and performance that is.
Yeah.
Because in a different show, that would be the cheesiest thing you'd ever seen in your fucking life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Character being like "bang," like the name of the episode, like my gun, and you'd be like, "Shut the fuck up."
Well, yeah, but Bernthal's casting as the Punisher was just so inspired. Like
it's crazy.
I mean, that's the thing that Marvel does really great, is casting a lot of the time. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
It's wild.
And it's the first time you kind of get a clear shot of Frank's face as well.
Yeah. The camera work here is very careful.
Yes.
Where it's the moment where you fully see him is when he's in complete control. And that is important, because that is going to become something they do in the next episode. And then, of course, I can't remember exactly how things go after that. But then once he's in control, we're able to fully see him. Which is just like, it makes him much more menacing than if we had been... it's interesting that they stick to the back of his head a lot of the time. I also think that there is something in here about... the ways, this is going to be a dumb sentence, the ways in which this season, at least this initial portion, does center, like, skulls.
Right.
And helmets and heads, which becomes relevant for Frank later, but is also, like, the fact that the Punisher has, like, the military buzz cut, and so you can see the shape of his skull. It's saying something.
I didn't put that together, but you're right. I love that, actually. Yeah.
It's really, like, it's subtle, and it's probably, like, it is just also, like, part of the general texture. But it puts you to mind of thinking about this stuff. And then when Matt gets shot in the face, you're like, huh, skulls, huh?
Yeah.
It's wild. Look, I mean, that's most of what I have for episode 1. I think it's a really strong opening. I think it's, like we said, it's thinking about the implications for the themes that were established previously, and really finding new ways to expound on them. And not just expound on them in linear ways, which I think is what another show would do. Another show would go, okay, well, Fisk was a big baddie, and they managed to stop him by working together and kind of catching a break in the end, thanks to Ben. I think another show might go, okay, well, we need to set up Fisk had all the police corrupt and under his thumb, and he had, this senator or whatever. Now what we need for this season in order to escalate things is we need a bigger guy who's got more people corrupt and has a bigger network and organization. And it turns out, no, they move laterally. And they go, what if there was one person who had control over everybody? What if there was one guy who didn't need anyone else's assistance? What if there was one guy with the power to do everything that Fisk did effortlessly by himself? And that's such a clever maneuver, I think, just from a storytelling perspective.
It's kind of like, well, what if the new villain was someone who could just kill the old villain? Like, and they would.
And he would in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But I think it avoids the thing that happens in stories, which is, like, particularly very serialized content, is if the tendency of like power creep or whatever you might want to call that. The classic example, obviously, is Dragon Ball Z has a big issue with this, where it's like, okay, well, we have a villain. Okay, well, the big guy, the good guys have to train enough to beat the villain. Okay, now we have an even stronger villain. Well, the good guys need to get even stronger now until, you have to look at an Excel spreadsheet to understand which Super Saiyan level is more powerful than the other, and what context they're beneficial for and things like that. Whereas this, I mean, the lateral maneuver means that it's not just challenging. I mean, this season isn't just challenging Matt physically. Like the first season, it's challenging everyone ethically. Particularly Karen gets the kind of brunt of that next episode. It's a really slick intro, and there were multiple times where I just literally like had my jaw open, like just going like, oh shit, like I have visceral reactions to this episode.
Yeah, there's something special going on with this season in particular. I mean, I said last season, this is my favorite season.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but I think. I kind of think you will agree with me the further we get into this season. Like, there's something going on here.
Pat's confident.
I am. I'm placing my bets down.
Shall we see if that confidence pays off? I don't know. Yeah, great episode. All right, well, let's take a quick break, and then we will talk about season 2, episode 2, which is episode 15, which is kind of like, I guess, if this was setting the stakes, season 2 is really just the characters get moving.
Yes.
And the themes get they get the ball rolling, Pat.
They do.
Which is very exciting. So we'll take a quick break. We will be back to talk about season 2, episode 2. Welcome back. Very quickly as well, Pat. The audience may know this, because I imagine they would have just had an ad for it, but we also have merch for this show.
What?
It's very exciting.
Tell me about the merch.
You can go to unring.press, and you can go and find yourself. It'll be linked directly. It's the first link in this description as well. You can go buy yourself a Daredevil and Details merch shirt. It's a premium heavyweight tee, Pat. It's very nice. The samples are supposed to arrive this week, so I'm very, very excited to see them. Heavyweight shirt. It's a really great way to help support the show. We include copyrighted content in this show where we insert clips, we insert speeches, so we can't monetize the episodes themselves on YouTube, which means that the only way that we can afford to do this is with Patreon support. But I thought the merch would be a really fun way for people to grab something, show they like the show, and also like it's just kind of sort of sweet that I have a lot. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
So you can go pick one of those up at underink.press, because it's very cool.
We care about the artistry in this show.
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah.
Gotta make some sacrifices.
Well, and I was that guy where I was like, I want a premium supplier, so it's embroidered. None of this screen print shit. Okay, it's in the threads, guys. All right, some nice stuff. So definitely go check that out. We appreciate your support. Okay, so season 2, episode 2, which is episode 15 of the show, Dogs to a Gunfight. This one again written by Michael Ramirez and Douglas Petrie. And of course directed by Phil Abraham. So Pat, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So Foggy finds Matt on the rooftop and brings him back home. Matt stays home to recover while Foggy tries to bargain for Grotto's witness protection. The DA herself turns up. The deal is simple. Grotto wears a wire to give them dirt on one of his bosses. Meanwhile, Matt has Potter repair his armor, then sets off to track down the Punisher. Grotto's sting is quickly revealed to be a trap for the Punisher, who shows up. So too does Daredevil, and the two fight while the police attempt to execute the Punisher. Grotto escapes in the chaos, while Matt can barely stand. When Foggy arrives, there's nothing left of the Devil of Hell's kitchen but a bloody smear in an empty apartment.
Oh, my Shakespeare shit this season, Pat.
I was saying to David before we started, like, fuck, you're such a poet.
I'm vibing, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in the final stages of the book 3 edit. I'm just vibing.
Yeah.
I'm in the word haze. I'm in the miasma at the moment. Okay, this episode absolutely whips ass. Every part of it is crazy good. It is. They take everything and they just turn the dial up to 11.
Yes.
Listen. I don't often say this, because you can listen to this show without watching Daredevil. Maybe you don't want to rewatch it again. Maybe you've got other shows that you're watching. You should watch this episode. Even if you you should watch this episode. It fucking whips. This and the next one, I think, which I haven't seen yet, I think are my two favorites of this season, maybe. Or at least that's how I remember it. This episode is so good. Even just immediately, right? You've got Foggy traversing the rooftops looking for Matt. And for the first time ever, we see a character who isn't Daredevil traversing the same spaces.
Yeah.
And you immediately go, huh. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
He can't leap from rooftop to rooftop, so he has to trick his way into apartment buildings.
Your kid locked you out? Yeah. Are you some kind of idiot? Yeah.
I like the hesitation, though. He's like, yeah. But he has to go down and up these entire buildings.
Yeah.
To etc. And it was the first time this show had made me think about, like, what does it mean for Matt to have such liberal freedom in the city compared to normal people when it comes to movement. Like, and it's New York City as well. He can move faster than most cars can because of how bad the traffic is. Like, what does that mean for this character in contrast to someone like Foggy? Like, how would that change how you think about the city and what it can be? Like, what does it do to your perception of people? Do they become more transactional because you see more of them so quick? Like, there's just questions for me that it raised that I literally never thought about.
What you just brought up about how he can move faster than cars because of the traffic specifically.
Yeah.
That's so ingenious. Like, because I was wondering that, like, they often show him like beating cars to their destination. I'm like, how the fuck does he do that? Mm-hmm. You're totally right. It would be the traffic.
This is New York, baby.
That's so good. Yeah.
But, like, again, really great texture.
Yeah.
It also helps that Batman could, do big zips around the city and has big cloak.
Yeah.
And here Matt does his big time flips, and when we learn later, has a weird grapple hook that I wish they'd stop using. This is fucking weird.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
Okay.
It's fine. So Foggy gets Matt home, and they have a really weird interaction where Matt's basically like, hey, like, I had to go out there. The police are not equipped to deal with this. And Foggy, kind of correctly, is like, you just got shot in the head. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What conversation are we possibly having right now?
Matt's so petulant.
He's so petulant.
Like, in at the end of that scene where Foggy tries to grab the suit and Matt, like, quickly, like, grabs the suit from him and wrestles it from him. He's like a child. Like, yeah, it's an interesting part of his psychology, I think.
Foggy has this line where he's like, why don't you take this, whatever this thing is, and, fucking bury it. Like, and he means the suit, but he means Daredevil, right? Yeah. This episode is thinking about what it means for Matt specifically to exist, not just have the double life, but to try and have it both ways. And Foggy is like, he's calling him on his bullshit. But then we also get the Karen version of that, which is the much more compassionate version, because she's, again, down very extremely bad. This woman is so down bad for Matt, it's crazy. She's down bad for this guy. But her version is a very different approach. And they have very different approaches to trying to convince him, hey, whatever this is, isn't sustainable. In Karen's case, the double light, whatever it is that he hasn't told her, and in Foggy's case, the fact that Matt could get seriously killed. And this person seems like someone that could pretty easily kill him. Which we'll get to, because there's a detail here which I'd forgotten about that I was astounded by. But yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good conversation. It's weird. And then Foggy goes down to the DA. And Mahoney explains that, like, this isn't the first vigilante that's styled themselves after Daredevil.
Yeah.
There are these, we call them devil weapons. And I was like, bro, should you? Is that responsible? It's wild. Okay, before we get to the DA, have you got anything else from that opening sequence?
No, that's it. But in terms of the devil worshippers, what's the difference between him and Daredevil? Well, Daredevil's not wearing a jumpsuit.
It's true. Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, like, what's the difference? Well, this guy's effective. Clearly, that seems to be. Also, like, what the fuck? What the fuck are you talking about, Mahoney? We call them devil bush. Why would you have a code word for that? What do you? It's so weird. Like, it's just a weird world building detail. I guess you would. Again, I think someone just watched The Dark Knight and walked into the writers' room because they were like, "I remember at the start when there were those guys wearing hockey pants."
Yeah.
It's just that. But obviously, we don't see them.
Yeah. No, it would be uninteresting to explore more of that for sure. Yeah.
Could you imagine that version of the show?
Yeah, it'd be so fucking goofy.
Just dudes in like red spandy, running about. Oh my god, Ben Affleck turns up. He's in his red spandy.
Oh, that'd be good.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Man, I feel so bad. Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun. I just think it sometimes lines like this can kind of push it into being a bit cartoony when it doesn't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And Mahoney his delivery is great, so it doesn't come across the way that it could otherwise. But for me, that's one of those things that walks a pretty fine line for me.
Yeah. I mean, there's every now and again the show reminds you like, hey, you're watching a superhero show. Don't forget that.
guys. Tony Stark's out there flying around. Don't worry about that.
And it's fine. It's it gets a pass because the rest of it is just so goddamn good.
It's true. Like Madame Gao doing a big palm and knocking Matt on his ass.
Yep.
We just got to take some. We got to take some L's sometimes.
That's right.
Take some L's as part of the genre. Look, I mean, then we get a really, really interesting sequence that I don't know that Foggy's actor pulls off. But so Foggy's standing up to the DA. Okay, basically, Foggy's like, "Hey, our client needs to get into WITSEC. You need to let me talk to him." And the DA rolls up, and Foggy says to Karen, he's like, "Shit, that's the DA herself. I thought she'd send her assistant." And she sort of pulls up to him and is like, "Hey, just so that you're aware, one day you're gonna need a job or a favor, and you're gonna want to be on the right side of me." And Foggy kind of lets her do her thing, lets her say it. Again, using his lawyer skills, he's like, "I'll just let her entrap herself."
Yeah.
And then he does. He does this gambit where he pulls out his phone. He's like, "That's fine. I'll just listen. I have no problem going above your head if you're not going to get it done. Don't even worry about that. I'll just call the judge. Don't even trip about it. That's fine. I'll work with your boss if you're not willing to work with me." And he gets all the way through. He's about to spell his last name. And she's like, "Just hang up. Like, what are you doing?" And he quite boldly puts himself out on a limb for this guy. I'm still not sure why, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second. But I've literally written down, I will say, I'm still very much wondering why they're helping Grotto. But they have this exchange where he's like, "Yeah, but what you're doing," here's some little legal maneuver he does. Where he's like, "Oh yeah, I could let you go and talk to him. But without his counsel present, then that would be, that's illegal, right?" And she appears to back off, which I thought was immediately suspicious. I was like, "Oh, there's some other angle here." She appears to back off, and she's like, "Look, your guy's a bad guy. We can help him, but he has to help us. He needs to give us something in exchange."
It was a play by Reyes as well.
Yes.
Just bluffing essentially.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, assuming that Foggy wouldn't pick up on the fact that it's like a double bluff.
Yeah.
And Foggy plays right into it. So yeah, I mean they have a good exchange. Again, Foggy's a really interesting lawyer character because he's just not intimidating in these moments.
Mm-hmm.
And he does come across as like, Karen's always on his side cheering him on. But it does, every now and then I'm like, oh, someone needs to sit this kid down and tell him how the world works.
Well, it kind of plays into his favor in this moment because, Reyes in that bluff, she really overextends herself, assuming that looks at Foggy, oh, this guy isn't going to push back. Whereas, and then as a result, Foggy stays silent and lets her do her thing, and as you said, entraps herself.
She does really overplay her hand.
Yeah.
But that's why Foggy's such an interesting character in these moments, because he's willing to, he has the patience when everyone else would crack in that moment. And he's willing to let them overplay them. So, because he knows something that we know as well, which is these bad guys or these bad actors in these systems, if you just let them run for long enough, they'll trip up. Because these are people that aren't used to being scrutinized because they have so much power. And he seems to understand something about the material relationship of the ways in which power within systems is somewhat self-defeating or kind of self-sabotaging is maybe a better way of putting it. He seems to understand that because of the events of last season and because of his background and, you know, because they walked away from that job, and the ways in which he was able to call on Marcy last season and know that she would do the right thing. He knows that these bad actors within these systems, whether or not they're doing it for their own benefit or they're pressured into it or it's a result of the system, he seems to like understand something fundamental about the legal system and the concept of policing here as kind of an extension of the state, and the ways in which like the bureaucracy is both a tool, but it's also a risk. Like it's a risk to itself.
He's a smart cookie.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah,
yeah.
And you see a lot more of that as the season progresses. He does a lot of lawyering, and he's a very good lawyer. Yeah,
it's kind of like, and then where his character ends up going at the end of the season makes sense. Like people would look at this guy and be like, he's good at this.
Yeah,
Matt gives good speeches. I don't know if Matt's a great lawyer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's actually I shouldn't say it, but yeah.
Okay. So so then we cut to once again the back of the Punisher's head, as he goes into the shop to buy. See, it's a really clever little like moment. It's also just so confronting. So he goes into the shop, to this pawn shop with the shopkeeper, and he's like, "Hey, I need a police scanner.
Yeah,
I need to be listening in on those frequencies," which is seemingly what Reyes knows he will do.
Right.
So she's sort of assuming that he's clued in enough to, you know, the only way to track down Grotto now that he's in police custody is to bug the police.
Yeah.
And he buys it. He's a skeezy shopkeeper. This guy's a swastika tattoo on his neck.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And Frank buys this radio. He basically pays him. He does some really clever exchanges where he pays the guy for the shotgun under the table, and then just takes the shells out.
Yeah.
And doesn't take the gun. Frank is such a intimidating character in these moments because it seems like he knows something about the world that none of the other characters do. He's so calm and he's so certain.
Yeah.
He has access to information we can't possibly fathom in these moments. It's really unsettling. And the thing that is this shopkeeper's undoing is Frank is walking out. He's done. This exchange is completed. This transaction is done. And the shopkeep can't help himself. And he goes for the upsell. He's, man, what are you into, man? I got all kinds of films, man. Are you into grannies? What are you into? And then he says, and I've got this one. It's an hour, and she's barely 12, man. And Frank stops in his tracks. And the dude completely misreads and again overplays and goes, oh, man, like, yeah, you like that shit? Yeah, don't worry, man. We got all kinds of entertainment here, bro. And I think if he hadn't said anything, I think if he does the upsell, when Frank stops, I think if he shut up, Frank might have been like, you burn that shit.
Yeah.
You destroy that shit. And then he might have let him live.
Yeah.
But because he goes, yeah, man, I know what you like, man. Like, don't even worry about it, bro. It's like, for Frank, that's the last straw. And again, without saying a word, Frank has said maybe 5 words this entire exchange. He walks backwards and he picks up a baseball bat. And he walks directly toward camera. And the guy's like, what are you doing? And he just lifts it back and then we cut. And it is like the physical presence Bernthal has on screen in this scene is wild. Like every molecule of oxygen in the room is his. He owns this room the second he steps into it. He's an intimidating guy.
Yeah. And they always get the lighting just right where he's always like shadowed, like his front side, it's so funny, like this guy tries to sell him porn and as you've been imitating him, like the way he talks, like, oh, what do you like, man? What are you into? Like it just made me chuckle.
He's a little grimy sales guy. Yeah. But it's the fact that it's child porn that is what pushes Frank over the edge, which again, interesting characterization. He's a guy who has absolutely no qualms about murdering people. Why is that a trigger for him? You know, like what is it? And it's already setting up these questions for his character that obviously we'll end up thinking about and talking about for the rest of the season. But I also think it's notable that he goes for the base. Like he knows the guy doesn't have a loaded gun anymore, and he goes for the baseball bat. He doesn't like pull out a pistol, which we are almost certain he has on this person. He doesn't like he goes for the baseball bat. Like, it's a very personal, brutal way to kill this guy.
Mhm.
You know,
Also needs to be silent.
yes.
Yeah.
And apropos of his moniker, he's punishing this guy, right?
Yes.
And it's a very specific way of doing that. Beating a guy to death with a baseball bat is very, very specific and gruesome. But that's like you were saying before. The show doesn't shy away from this stuff. When it gets these dark moments, it's fully willing to let them play out, which is very cool. Yeah, it's great. It's a really great. Like I said, watch this episode if you haven't. But like, what a great sort of study in character and storytelling and cinematography, where he says Frank says maybe 5 things, and you learn so much about him and the way that he thinks and the way that he kind of, you can immediately intuit like, oh, what training does he have? Okay, why was the child porn the thing that, because this guy does plenty of reprehensible shit before that, that anyone would be like, well, fuck that guy. Why is that? Like, it's setting up these questions and building this character without saying anything.
Yeah. Because he says so little, like everything he does say is like very interesting and like, you know, kind of has a lot of information in it. And you're just like, oh, like what's the deal with this guy? Or it's kind of delicious information, you know?
Yeah.
Like those pink aliens from Futurama. It's just like, oh, all this information, gimme.
He's like a big scary murdery Wesley. Every time he talks, you're like, give me more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, next up so then we have a few really interesting conversations with Karen, Foggy, and then Matt, of course. So Karen, I think they're back at the office now, maybe. I can't remember exactly where this takes place, but they are back at the office, and she has a conversation with Foggy about. She's like, you know, she's having this like real moment of introspection where she's like, I can't help wonder if I attract like bad luck and danger and you know, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
And Foggy kind of plays it off as a joke. And he's like, you know, you survived it. You're a badass. Like, you know, but what's pretty clear from Karen here is that she's not talking about what just happened necessarily. She's also thinking about Matt and the position she's put herself in with him. And the way that the show communicates that is we cut immediately to her at Matt's apartment.
Wait, what do you mean? Like, that she's thinking about the position that she's put Matt in?
No, that she's put herself in with him.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Well, in the sense that like she knows that he's lying to her about something really important, and he won't be honest with her, and yet she keeps pursuing him anyway. And when she's talking to Foggy and she's saying, do I attract this bad luck and this danger and things like that? Why am I putting myself in harm's way like this? Am I doing it to myself? I think she's also somewhat, or the way I read it, she's also somewhat thinking about her relationship with Matt.
Right.
Putting herself in the proximity of someone that she knows is fully capable of harming her and is lying to her on a daily basis.
Okay. The way I took it was she feels immensely guilty about killing someone, Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says something along the lines of, well, what if I do deserve it? And she's maybe not literally thinking that the Punisher is going to come after her, but in more of an abstract sense, like, if there is someone hunting down bad people, like I'm a bad person, so maybe someone's hunting me. That's how I do it.
I mean, that's definitely like I think that's definitely what she's saying.
Yeah.
My thinking is just like, I wonder, I read it as she was thinking about this other stuff at the same time.
Yeah, well, the fact that it cuts to her going to Matt's apartment, I think, that's telling.
I mean, Foggy's basically like, there's also this really good moment in the cell before then where they're with Grotto and they walk in and Grotto's like, hey, where's you know, the Murdoch part of Nelson and Murdoch? And Foggy's like, oh, he's taking a sick day. And there's this flash of disappointment on Karen's face.
Yeah.
It's really subtle, but it's very, very clever.
That happens again later this episode.
Yeah.
Can't remember when. It's like outside that sting.
Yeah. But because Matt's not there.
Yeah.
It's really great. But yeah, we basically then immediately cut to Karen visiting Matt. One thing we haven't said is that when Matt gets his head absolutely rocked the fuck by this bullet, he's like having weird hearing issues.
Yeah.
And that's going to pay off later, I'm sure.
Yes.
Which is cool. I don't know how. I can't remember, but I'm excited to find out.
Well, it pays off at the end of this episode.
Well, it does. Yeah. He gets his ass kicked quick because of it.
Consequences. I love me some consequences in stories.
We love a consequence in a story. If you make a choice, this is something that I was talking about with the Star Wars guys. We just recorded a podcast about Rey and whether or not she's like a Mary Sue type character.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we talked about a lot in that is the ways in which stories imagine the execution of power, like the utilization of power, and what it costs to wield power. We were talking before about the DA and how she completely overreaches. One of the things that the show's thinking about is the cost for her in using the power she has, right? The cost there is its risk. Mm-hmm. It's a risk that Murdoch, that Nelson can outplay her, because any exertion of that power is putting herself in kind of in risk, in harm's way, because it exposes her. And this show is very, very good about thinking about these things and executing them, where everything someone does has a consequence, intentional and unintentional. And it's interesting because this is both an unintentional physical consequence. Obviously, he's having this weird hearing issue, but also it's happening at the same time as Karen's coming to his apartment. It's his choice to go out there as Daredevil to save her life has the consequence of this really uncomfortable conversation where he continues to keep her at arm's length.
Yeah.
It's really great, sort of multi-purpose storytelling, right? Dual-purpose scene work.
Yes.
They have a really good conversation, which to me is a very Batman conversation. And Matt has this line where he goes, she's like, you can tell me, like, I just need to know you're okay. We care about you. I don't buy this falling downstairs and shit. There's only so many I could take.
Well, for context as well, last episode, Foggy told Matt that the reasoning he's giving Karen about Matt's absence is that Matt's an alcoholic, which is a very plausible explanation. And it's honestly, and then when Karen comes to his apartment, sees the glass on the floor, and you're looking at it through that frame, and it's like so interesting, like thinking about what Karen thinks of Matt.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what she says, hair of the dog that bit you.
Yeah.
Which is a really clever little line. And then Matt, they have this really great challenge exchange where Matt says, because she's like, there's only so many fucking excuses I'll buy, and Matt goes, that I'm blind. And she goes, and I'm not an idiot. And I'm like, fucking hell.
Yeah, that's
like, Karen goes hard in the paint in this scene. Because she's not wrong. She's like, don't you dare throw that shit in my face. Like, you know what I'm saying here. Don't be fucking coy with me now. And then we get, this is where we get the conversation they have about, they have the conversation about whether or not Batman villains are made by Batman and his presence, right? And Karen says, I think that we created him the moment we let Daredevil, the devil of Hell's Kitchen, and then Matt immediately cuts her off. He's like, there's no connection.
Yeah, it's so interesting how he's so adamant that Daredevil isn't responsible for people like the Punisher popping up.
He won't even entertain the conversation.
Yeah.
Just completely shuts it down. And then, Karen goes, there's something about this city that makes good people shoot their way out of bad situations. Which, what an absolutely cracking line of dialogue.
Yeah.
There's something about this city that makes good people shoot their way out of... She's talking about the Punisher. She's talking about herself. She's talking about Daredevil. She's talking about all the criminals that were working for Fisk. She's talking about Fisk. She's talking about everybody. Everybody except, of course, Foggy and Mahoney. The only uncorruptibles in this show. It's just a really compelling conversation. And Matt's conclusion is that there's no relationship between the Punisher and Daredevil. And then, of course, we immediately cut to him going to get the helmet repaired. Which to me is no coincidence. They just have a conversation about... She's like, you can tell me when you're ready. And then they talk about it. And then there's this great moment where she's about to leave his apartment. And she kind of hesitates. And she's like, look, we care about you. And she kind of, grabs his hand and then leaves. What I really think is interesting here is because we then cut to Potter's workshop. It's saying, like, it's obviously thinking about whether, like, Matt's insistence on being Daredevil is the ultimate reason why he can't have a relationship with Karen in this moment, right? And it's very consciously showing him make this choice over and over and over again, up until he gets his absolute ass kicked the first time. Now he's in a weakened state and he's going after it again. There's going to be a consequence here. And we know that too. And we know it's a bad idea, but we're also like, what else can he do?
Mhm.
What are the choices he have? And I feel like he feels the same way. And the story in its sequencing and its structure communicates the things that Matt is thinking and feeling very well. It's very precise.
Like the fact that Karen brings up that moral dilemma, and then it cuts to Matt's, getting his suit fixed so they can do more of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good. You're right. Again, like very sort of elementary filmmaking, like communicating his psychology through just like, juxtaposition of images or like juxtaposition of scenarios and settings and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's very like it's very good cause and effect, even for scenes that aren't related to each other.
Yeah.
You have Foggy and Karen have the conversation in the office, which makes Karen think about Matt.
Mm.
She then goes to visit Matt, which then makes Matt think about Daredevil. Which he then goes to Potter's. It's very like good cause and effect storytelling. It's great. Plus, that whole conversation's really really interesting. So they've got a lot of stuff
between Karen and Matt.
Karen and Matt, yeah.
I kind of think it would be more interesting if he was an alcoholic. Because like what reason would he have? Maybe he never got over being blind. He's an alcoholic to deal with that. Like it wouldn't be kind of plausible in the scope of this show, but like I was just thinking about that. Like, man, that'd be a really interesting character.
They did there's a very similar maneuver they sometimes do in the Batman comics. Where he has a drinking problem, and he's Batman also. Yeah. I think it's some of the Frank Miller ones, but
makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does. Who else? But and one of the levers they pull on there is what kind of friction does doing this job create?
Mm-hmm.
Does being the Batman create, and what are like the unintended stress consequences of that when it comes to stress and well-being and stuff? You see it a little bit in the kind of trace elements of Snyder's Justice League a bit more clearly, where Bruce Wayne in that is clearly an alcoholic.
Well, is it because Ben Affleck looks like a cocaine addict?
Yeah, so that's, no.
The Zack Snyder's
Zack Snyder's one. Yeah. No. And it's a really like kind of clever, one of the first things you get from him in his personal life is he sort of wakes up next to a beautiful woman and like chugs down some aspirin with a glass of red wine from last night.
Right.
And it's that kind of thinking about like, how would you, if you were like 40, nearly 50, how would you be dealing with all of the stuff you're doing and the stresses that you continually put yourself under?
Yeah.
And you have to wonder if that's a lever that would be really interesting for us to see in Matt. I'm not trying to pitch your perspective season 4, but I think that's an interesting element to throw in the mix.
I mean, whenever I see shows like this, I don't know, it's a bit sadistic, but I'm always like, what if you really, really beat down these characters?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's when you get the keenest sense of the deepest part of the character. Like that is like true, like humanity kind of human condition kind of exploration stuff, and that's the sort of stuff I like.
I mean, that's Andor, that's Severance. They're very much thinking about that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly Andor, right? You get Luthen, who really fully understands the clear picture there, where he's like, the people aren't going to rebel until the Empire overreaches and creates the possibility, removes the possibility that people can't rebel. And so he's constantly trying to incite the Empire to kind of create the conditions for a rebellion. And you have to wonder, like, is there a version that the show could do? I mean, to me, like, for a character like Matt, yeah, like, drinking might make sense, but maybe something more like pain pills or something like that could be kind of interesting. I don't know. There's definitely room there, I think, for the latitude of the show to put him in even more dire positions. Obviously, they do that. I don't want to preempt where season 3 starts, but they beat him down pretty fucking hard.
Yeah, they do.
But I think you're right. I think it might be interesting, because this is probably, in my mind, one of the more, like you said, Matt kind of has his life together initially, before the Punisher turns up. I kind of wonder if it might have been interesting to see his life together plus something else that's bothering him that continues to be an issue. Absent, obviously, the Karen stuff.
Maybe another element of conflict that right from the beginning that grows would have been interesting.
And whether or not, I mean, obviously, them being broke, is a pretty big component of this season. It's part of why they take the cases they do. But yeah, it just seems to me that there's a missing link somewhere in here of what other ongoing conflict does Matt have at like an interpersonal level while all of this stuff is going well. And we do get a bit of that with the faith and things like that later on. But yeah, it certainly just feels like it's a weird thing to say, but I wish they had hurt him more.
Yeah.
Before he gets shot in the head.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these seasons are long, like 13 1-hour episodes. So they get into it eventually in the season. So yeah, I forgive. It's all true. We'll
let him off the hook for the fact that it's basically a perfect first 2 episodes, and we are pitching slightly improved concepts, like ridiculous criticism. I mean, the next thing I've got is obviously the revelation that Potter provides us, right? Which is Matt's getting his helmet fixed, and Potter's like, it's going to take me a few days to make a new one, but Matt's like, what can you do for me tonight? And Potter explains, as this is all going on, that the Punisher, like, his shot placement is so precise that it hit exactly in the middle, which is the strongest part, which, he's like, it was a warning shot, is the revelation here. The Punisher wasn't trying to kill him. And it's, what a detail to add. The fact that Frank is such a good shot that he can shoot someone in the head and not kill them as a warning.
Why? Yeah,
it's just
raises a lot of questions.
I have a lot of questions too, but it's just a cool. It's a cool detail for the character, the character drama between these two.
Yeah. Conceptually, I love it. Yeah, it's and in that fight on the rooftop in the first episode, remember how after they have a scuffle, and then he beats Daredevil down, and then he just like keeps walking because he's like, well, my beef is not with you, man. I got some shit to do. I got to kill this other guy.
I'm busy.
Yeah. He, and as he probably knows about Daredevil, right? And Daredevil isn't a villain in this, at least as much as he's not the kind of villain that Frank wants to put down.
No, well, I think in Frank's imaginary at this point, he's a potential ally.
Yeah,
in the future, right? Like that's what he sees as like someone that understands the shape of the world in the way that he does. And so yeah, I think for him it's like, listen. You got nothing to do with me, friend. I got nothing to do with you. Let's just both go our separate ways and live our separate lives, But then, of course, we get Potter, and he says, like, I can repair it, but it's not going to do much good. So Matt's getting ready to get out there. And then Foggy and Karen are working with the DA for this, like, wire tap on one of Grotta's bosses, which almost immediately breaks bad, and we learn is a sting to try and trap the Punisher to take it down. And not just that, but like they immediately are trying to kill this guy. Yeah. They're not taking him into custody at all in any way, shape, or form. It's a really grim characterization of the police so far in this season.
Yeah, like just. Reyes is like this sort of like Machiavellian political schemer. And that's probably an example of, a lack of faith in the system that's supposed to be moral. That's maybe Frank uses to justify his actions in his head. It's like, well, it's everything's fucked. We're just different institutions trying to, achieve the same thing, essentially. It's like this, it's a very amoral outlook from Frank's perspective,
Yeah, I think amoral's right, because I was tempted to think of it as nihilistic, but I think you're right. I think it's amoral, and I think they lack faith in the systems that they're using, they lack faith in that the systems that exist can achieve the outcomes they've been put in place to do. Frank doesn't think the police are getting it done. He doesn't think Daredevil's getting it done. In the same way, the DA doesn't think that the procedures and the approach that Foggy and Karen are trying to implement is going to work, so completely ignores it. Like almost just on face. Doesn't even. Like, clearly from the start was planning this.
Yeah. She continues to lie right up until Karen presses that button.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's not until Karen's like, hold on, I'm calling you on this bluff that we didn't realize was happening.
Yeah, she's like completely just like, and she's like, no, don't worry about it. It's just, this procedure. It's
I love that they're like, oh, it's fully like interference from the shipping container or whatever.
They put on, they've scheduled a whole song and dance just for Karen and Foggy.
But at that point, why? It's about to break bad anyway.
Yeah.
It's odd, but yeah, it's very funny. And then we get also to this day, Foggy being completely inappropriate at all the wrong times never ceases to amaze me.
What do you mean? When is he inappropriate?
Like in this scene, he's like he's being way too combative with the DA from the start, even though he doesn't know something's wrong.
Right.
Like he's just weirdly petulant, and she's like, "Keep your fucking panties on, dude. Like, just chill out."
Yeah. When he's, they say, "Oh, target is in the area." And he's like, "What target? What do you mean?"
Yeah, she's like, "It's a turn of phrase, dude."
Literally, it is. He's the.
Well, in this case,
target they're following.
In this case, yes, he is the target. Yeah, and then obviously, Foggy realizes something's wrong too late. And we get the revelation that the grotto is bait for the Punisher. Matt turns up having sort of worked all of this out independently, and obviously knows because of Karen and Foggy. And we get sort of a very, like you said, a kind of a weirdly sequenced little fight between these two, where the initial gunshots... So Matt saves the Punisher. That's the first thing he does, which we don't realize, because the police are lining up their shot, as is the Punisher. And oh no, hang on.
What?
No. The Punisher's lining up his shot on Grotto.
Yeah.
And then Matt intervenes. The police see him, and then they start shooting.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is very cool. You pan up the water tower.
Yeah.
It's once again the back of Frank's head. Really, really thinking about skulls, guys. Very skull-heavy episode. They have their scuffle. Daredevil does what it always does, which is puts water everywhere during a fight.
Yeah.
To get some sick slow-mo shots that we get in this.
Yeah.
We'd love to see it. Also, we know that this probably helps it be more conceivable that Matt is still, a factor in this combat, because we know he fights better in the rain.
Yeah.
He's fully injured, but we know he fights. So maybe it helps level the believability of this interaction a little bit more as well. I can't tell what they're... Like, when they start fighting, I still don't really... Like, I don't really know what they're both trying to achieve.
Yeah.
It's a very weirdly framed... Like, because Matt's sort of, like, trying to tackle him, and Frank's trying to tackle him, and then they're getting shot at. And I'm like, I don't really understand what's happening.
It seems like they're just trying to fight each other, but these pesky bullets are getting in the way. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a bit awkward. I think the vision behind it was like, cool fight while they're dodging bullets, but practically it seems a bit clunky. It's
it's good. It just comes across as a bit like, maybe unfocused isn't even the right word. I think you're right. It's just clunky and awkward, but I mean, it's supposed to be awkward. It's not supposed to be clunky. Which I know that those are the same, but you get what I'm saying.
Well, I think have you noticed that like they try to have at least one fight scene every episode?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's what this is.
Oh, I see.
And because they had the exact same fight last episode, Punisher and Daredevil fighting on a roof, and then they're fighting on a roof again, well, you gotta add something. So gunshots.
Gunshots.
Yeah.
What if they were being shot at by the police? Yeah, I mean it's very good, and then they Frank fully tackles them both. Is it Frank? I can't remember who does it, but they both go falling through a skylight or a window into an apartment. And that you're right. That's where they both get up and they're circling each other, and Matt's hearing starts to go.
Yeah.
And then we kind of cut from that to Foggy doing a big time run, going to see if his body's okay. And of course, he's gone. We don't know what's happened to Daredevil.
In that part where Matt's like phasing out, it's from his POV, and you just see the Punisher like slowly coming toward him. Mm-hmm. Imagine that's the last thing you see, just John Bernthal coming toward you with the intent of violence.
That shit's scary.
Yeah,
that shit's scary. No, thank you. It's a really tidy way to end it, and we have a question. Where's Matt?
Yes.
And also, what's Foggy gonna say to Karen about where Matt's gone? Mm-hmm. We have questions like, why is Frank doing this? What does it mean for him to have killed that shopkeeper? What is Matt gonna think of his ethics? We have these questions that are raised, and also, is Matt okay? Now, the keen viewer will note that this is episode 2 of the season. So it's unlikely Matt will die, but it's interesting nonetheless. How's he going to get out of this what's going to transpire?
Yes.
Which ends up being, pretty interesting for me. Especially the way it ends up resolving, which we'll get to next episode. But yeah, I mean, I think overwhelmingly the opening to this season reminds me a little bit of some of the maneuvers that the first season build up to and execute on. It's able to kind of put them immediately on the table and use them. It doesn't need that time to work on setup for these things and these systems. It just sort of implicitly lets them run, which is very kind of tidy storytelling. It doesn't have to tell you that the police are corrupt, or not corrupt, but that they are bureaucratically inert. It doesn't have to tell you that. It can just kind of show you very quickly in the DA's approach to policing and Mahoney's approach to policing, and that one line of dialogue from that guy about paperwork.
Yeah.
Very, very efficient stuff happening here.
Yeah.
So, spoilers is great. Shockingly, Daredevil continues to be good.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, who would have thought, Pat? Who would have seen that coming?
And it's going to get a whole lot better in the coming 2 episodes.
Yeah, exactly right. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that you want to touch on?
I think that's about it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, another one in the bag, Pat. Another great set of episodes that were very, very fun to watch. Next episode we will be watching episodes 3 and 4 of season 2. Mm-hmm. Those are really the end of the kind of initial Punisher arc. I think the next episode in particular is one of my favorites of the show.
I think it's my favorite too.
It's so good.
I think it is my favorite of the entire show. Yeah.
Interesting. That might be true of me as well. I guess I'll have to see when I rewatch it. It's been a while.
But that being episode 4 is also. I'll just say, last time I watched it, I actually cried. I was bawling tears.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, shit. Pat with the sizzle. Pat with the sizzle, bro. Okay. I'm keen.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, that's going to do it for this episode, Pat. Where can people find you on the internet?
People can find me at... I do a podcast with my friend Mitchie called A Method to the Madness. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. We have a website, AMTTM.com. Find all our socials from there.
Love it. And of course, you can support everything we do at ZeroIndent.com. You can support us on Patreon, which helps us find the time and money to do this. And of course, you can go grab yourself a brand new Daredevil t-shirt at underink.press, which is very exciting. So hopefully the samples will arrive before our next recording so I can show you guys how cool they are.
Yeah.
But that's all she wrote for this episode. We appreciate your support. Honestly, the best way you can help the show is to send it to one friend who you think might like it, or give it a rating or review on your podcast catcher or platform of choice. We appreciate it, and we will catch you guys next time for episodes 3 and 4 of Daredevil Season 2.
See you later.
Bye. Spicy episode out. It wasn't that spicy.
Yeah, next to it spicy.
Yeah.